If there is one universal truth in back-end engineering, it's that deploying code on a Friday afternoon is practically begging the universe for a catastrophe. I was staring at my IDE, the dark mode screen reflecting in my exhausted eyes. I had been surviving on lukewarm coffee and sheer panic for 3 days, frantically trying to debug the routing logic for Synapse Match, our company's highly anticipated AI dating algorithm. The app was supposed to revolutionize romance by analyzing data points to find an absolute, mathematically perfect soulmate. Personally, I thought the concept was ridiculous. Love wasn't an API you could just call when you were lonely. But my boss, Silas Vance, believed otherwise. Silas was the CEO of Synapse, and a man who seemingly operated without a central nervous system. He was terrifyingly handsome, notoriously ruthless, and possessed the emotional range of a smart refrigerator. He scheduled his bathroom breaks in 3-minute Outlook blocks, and once fired a project manager for using the word synergy in a sprint retrospective. He wanted the algorithm flawless for the press preview at 4 p.m. It was 3:57 p.m. Mia, my team lead, hissed, peering over the top of my cubicle. Is the patch ready? The press is in the lobby. Silas is standing by the main display screen. I'm committing the changes now, I muttered, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. I just needed to adjust one loop in the Python script to ensure the primary matching function didn't recursively call the employee database instead of the beta tester pool. Done. Pushing to production. I hit enter. The terminal flashed green. Deployment successful. I slumped back in my ergonomic chair, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Tuesday. Out in the main bullpen, a massive digital display board had been erected. The press gathered around it, cameras flashing. Silas Vance stood next to the screen in a tailored charcoal suit, looking completely unbothered by the sheer weight of $1 billion IPO resting on his shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, Silas's crisp, authoritative voice echoed through the PA system. Today we eliminate the inefficiency of modern dating. Let me demonstrate the power of our algorithm by generating the system's first absolute match. He tapped a sleek tablet. The massive screen behind him whirred to life. Code cascaded down the display like the Matrix, followed by a loading bar. The algorithm was searching millions of data points, analyzing personalities, search histories, and behavioral metrics. The screen flashed a brilliant gold. 2 photographs materialized side by side beneath a massive, glowing banner that read, 100% neural compatibility. Perfect match. The photograph on the left was Silas Vance, looking stoic and terrifying. The photograph on the right was me, Mia Vana, complete with my messy bun, dark circles, and a startled expression from my ID badge photo. The bullpen went dead silent. The press stopped taking photos. My team lead slowly turned to look at me, his face pale. Silas Vance didn't blink. He stared at the massive screen, then slowly turned his terrifying, icy gaze across the bullpen until it locked directly onto my cubicle. Well, so much for a clean deployment. I was going to need a lot more coffee. Chapter 1. My brain blue-screened. For 5 agonizing seconds, the only sound in the entire Synapse bullpen was the low, electric hum of the server racks. I sat frozen in my ergonomic mesh chair, staring at the massive, 50-foot digital display board. My own face, captured on a Tuesday morning when I was running late and hadn't brushed my hair, stared back at me, floating right next to the terrifyingly symmetrical, aggressively handsome face of my CEO, Silas Vance. 100% neural compatibility. Perfect match. Then the press broke. It was like someone had dropped a Mentos into a Diet Coke. The bullpen erupted into a chaotic frenzy of shouting journalists and blinding camera flashes. Mr. Vance, is this a publicity stunt? Silas, have you been secretly testing the algorithm on your own employees? Who is she? Is she an executive? If this were a normal tech startup, I might have been able to laugh it off as a rogue Easter egg coded by a prankster. But Synapse was not a normal startup, and Silas Vance did not do Easter eggs. He did hyper-optimized data streams and quarterly profit margins. Up at the podium, Silas didn't flinch. He didn't drop his sleek tablet, and his perfectly tailored charcoal suit didn't so much as wrinkle. He simply raised a hand. The sheer, freezing authority of the gesture silenced the journalists instantly. Ladies and gentlemen, Silas said, his voice as smooth and cold as liquid nitrogen. As you can see, The algorithm is highly adept at processing complex internal variables. This concludes today's live demonstration. Our PR team will email you the official beta testing metrics by 5 p.m. He tapped the screen. The display went instantly black. He handed the tablet to his panicked chief of PR, stepped off the podium, and turned his gaze toward the engineering quadrant. He didn't point. He didn't shout. He simply made eye contact with me from 50 feet away, gave a single, microscopic tilt of his head toward the executive elevators, and walked away. Mia, my team lead Dave, whispered in horror from the next cubicle over. He looked like he was attending my funeral. What did you do? I don't know. I hyperventilated, rapidly scrolling through my terminal window. The Python script was clean. I checked the API calls. It must have been a routing error in the final loop. It somehow bypassed the beta tester sandbox and queried the global employee directory. I accidentally matched myself with the boss. You're going to jail, Dave said solemnly. Or worse, he's going to make you document legacy code. Before I could pack up my mechanical keyboard and flee the building, a sharp click-clack of heels echoed behind me. It was Eleanor, Silas's executive assistant. She was a woman who radiated such intense organizational energy that I suspected she optimized her own DNA. Ms. Vanna, Eleanor said smoothly. Mr. Vance would like to see you in his office. Immediately. The walk to the executive elevator felt like a death march. As the glass doors slid shut and I rocketed up to the 50th floor, my mind raced through every possible worst-case scenario. Silas Vance was going to fire me. No, he was going to sue me. He was going to sue me for tanking the IPO, blacklist me from the entire tech industry, and I'd be forced to spend the rest of my life building terrible WordPress sites for local bakeries. The elevator chimed. The top floor of Synapse was a masterpiece of cold, soft tech minimalism. It featured stark white walls, frosted glass dividers, and a complete absence of joy. I was led into Silas's sprawling corner office, which offered a dizzying, panoramic view of the city skyline. Silas was standing behind his massive desk. He wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at me. Mr. Vance. I blurted out before he could even open his mouth. I decided my only defense was a preemptive strike of total submission. I am so sorry. It was a fatal exception in the routing logic. I am drafting my letter of resignation right now. I will hand over all my GitHub repositories. I waive my right to severance, and please don't sue me. I still have student loans. Silas watched me babble with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a highly erratic lab rat. Are you finished? He asked quietly. I clamped my mouth shut and nodded. Silas sat down in his leather chair, folding his hands neatly on his pristine desk. Sit down, Ms. Vanna. I cautiously took a seat in the chair opposite him, waiting for the axe to fall. You are not resigning, Silas stated, his dark eyes locking onto mine. And I am not suing you. While your code deployment was spectacularly inefficient, terminating you right now would signal to the press that the match was an error. If the press believes the algorithm is broken, investor confidence drops. If investor confidence drops, the IPO fails. I blinked. So, I'm not fired. No, Silas said, sliding a thick, professionally bound legal document across the desk toward me. He uncapped a heavy silver fountain pen and laid it carefully on top of the paper. You are being promoted to my girlfriend. Chapter 2. I stared at the heavy legal document resting on the polished glass of his desk. The title, printed in a crisp, sans serif font, read, Non-Disclosure and Temporary Beta Relationship Protocol. Promoted. I repeated, the word tasting like a syntax error in my mouth. To your girlfriend. Colloquially, yes, Silas replied, not a single hair on his perfectly styled head moving. For the purpose of internal documentation, you will be classified as a level 4 strategic asset. But to the press, the board of directors, and the general public, we are deeply, inexplicably in love. I looked from the contract to Silas, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I let out a slightly hysterical laugh. Mr. Vance, I'm a back-end engineer. My idea of a romantic evening is ordering takeout and watching my scripts compile without throwing an error. I wear oversized hoodies to work. I haven't brushed my hair since Tuesday. We are not a believable couple. Silas steepled his fingers, completely unfazed by my impending panic attack. Believability is subjective. Data is objective. The public saw a screen declare us a perfect match with 100% neural compatibility. The algorithm is the core product of this IPO. If I announce that the core product is broken, our valuation plummets by an estimated 40% by tomorrow morning. He leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto mine with the intensity of a laser level. We are not fixing the code, Ms. Vanna. We are patching the narrative. By pretending to date, I summarized, feeling a headache blossoming behind my eyes. By executing a 6-month, highly visible beta test, Silas corrected smoothly. Once the IPO is secured and the initial funding rounds are closed, we will issue a joint press release stating that while our neural compatibility remains high, our logistical life paths have diverged. An amicable, mutually respectful incompatibility. I pulled the thick contract toward me, flipping open the cover page. It wasn't just a standard NDA. It was a terrifyingly detailed roadmap of human interaction. There were clauses for minimum required public appearances and acceptable parameters for physical contact, hand-holding, Category A. You wrote a terms of service for a fake relationship, I muttered in awe. My legal team drafted it in the elevator ride up, he said, tapping a finger against his desk. The deliverables are simple. 3 public appearances per month. Coordinated social media engagement curated by the PR department. In exchange, you retain your position, your salary is tripled for the duration of the contract, and you receive a substantial stock option package upon the successful close of the IPO. I stopped reading and looked up. Tripled? I expect absolute professionalism, Ms. Vanna. You are effectively taking on a second full-time role. You will be compensated for your bandwidth. I stared at the silver fountain pen resting on the contract. Triple my salary. Stock options. It was enough money to pay off my student loans, upgrade my entire hardware setup, and probably buy a house. All I had to do was pretend to be infatuated with a man who scheduled his emotional responses on a calendar. What happens if I say no? I asked quietly. Then I walked downstairs, tell the press that a junior engineer deployed a flawed routing loop, and the company's valuation tanks. I will survive the financial hit, Silas said, his voice entirely devoid of malice, operating purely on logic. But the board will demand a scapegoat. You will be fired, blacklisted, and buried under a mountain of corporate litigation. It wasn't a threat. It was just a brutal, perfectly calculated if/else statement. If Mia signs the contract, then Mia gets rich. Else Mia's life is ruined. I picked up the heavy silver pen. It felt cold and incredibly expensive in my grip. For the record, my code wasn't completely flawed. I mumbled defensively, flipping to the signature page. It was just a minor routing exception. The back-end architecture is actually very sound. I am sure your architecture is adequately structured, Silas said, watching me sign my name with a terrifyingly blank expression. But moving forward, I suggest you apply that same structural integrity to your personal grooming. PR will send a styling team to your apartment at 0600 hours tomorrow. We have a coffee date at 0800. I dropped the pen. A styling team? A coffee date? Tomorrow. The press cycle moves quickly, Ms. Vanna. We must establish the narrative before the markets open. Silas took the signed contract, sliding it neatly into a file folder. Welcome to the executive team. Please do not be late. I detest inefficiency. I stood up, my legs feeling slightly numb. I had just sold my soul, my free time, and my hoodies to a corporate robot. One more thing, Silas called out just as I reached the frosted glass doors. I turned back. For the duration of this beta test, Silas said, his face completely impassive. You may call me Silas. Right, I swallowed hard. See you at coffee, Silas. I fled the office, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. The algorithm had crashed, and I was officially caught in the infinite loop. Chapter 3. At precisely 6 a.m., my apartment was invaded by a highly coordinated strike team armed with flat irons and counter pallets. The hoodies are a security risk, the lead stylist, a severe woman named Beatrice, announced as she ruthlessly purged my closet. We are pivoting your entire aesthetic. Mr. Vance's brand is cold and authoritative. To balance the visual metrics, you need to project soft tech. Approachable, minimalist, but undeniably premium. By 7:15 a.m., I had been scrubbed, styled, and stuffed into a pair of perfectly tailored sage green trousers and a fluid cream silk blouse. My messy bun had been engineered into a sleek, structural twist. I barely recognized the polished, pastel-hued woman staring back at me in the mirror. I looked like the CEO of a highly successful botanical startup, not a back-end engineer who regularly ate cereal for dinner. At 7:30 a.m., a sleek, tinted black SUV silently pulled up to my curb. I climbed into the back seat to find Silas Vance reviewing a glowing tablet, looking like a terrifyingly handsome GQ model who had been optimized for maximum intimidation. He briefly glanced up from his quarterly earnings report, his dark eyes scanning my new peach and cream aesthetic. "Acceptable," he stated, returning his gaze to the screen. "The color palette contrasts efficiently with my charcoal suit. Good for the camera flashes." "Good morning to you too, Silas," I grumbled, pulling my own tablet out of my tote bag. "Since we have 20 minutes before we reach the coffee shop, we need to establish our working environment. I'm not flying blind into a 6-month beta test." Silas didn't look up. "My legal team already outlined the terms." "Your legal team wrote a terms of service." "I wrote a system architecture." I tapped my screen, bringing up the shared workspace I had frantically built at 2 a.m. fueled by anxiety and a stale energy drink. I sent him the link. Silas's tablet pinged. He opened the file, his brow furrowing infinitesimally. "What is this?" "It's a master spreadsheet, backed by a simple Python script I wrote to manage our calendar API," I explained, leaning over the center console. "If we are going to fake a relationship, we need version control. I've broken our interactions down into manageable datasets. Tab 1, Conversation Arrays." Silas actually set his stylus down, looking intrigued. "Explain." "When the paparazzi or board members are in earshot, we cannot risk dead air or unscripted variables," I said, pointing to the columns. "So, I've pre-compiled lists of safe, neutral topics. Column A, the weather. Column B, emerging microchip supply chain issues. Column C, anecdotes about my cat Boolean. You will memorize 3 facts about Boolean." "I am not memorizing facts about a feline named after a logical data type," Silas said flatly. "Fact 1, he only eats salmon. Fact 2, he hates closed doors. Fact 3, he is my primary rubber duck debugging tool. Memorize it, or I'll tell the press you're allergic to joy." Silas stared at me. For a second, I thought I had pushed too far, and he was going to toss me out of the moving SUV. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitched, a microscopic, almost imperceptible glitch in his stoic programming. "Fine," he murmured, his eyes dropping back to the spreadsheet. "The conversation arrays are logical, but your parameters for physical proximity are highly inefficient." He tapped a section labeled Public Affection Quota, PQ. "You have hand-holding scheduled only during entry and exit events," Silas noted, his analytical brain immediately taking over the logistics of fake dating. "That does not generate enough visual data for the tabloids to confirm our 100% compatibility score. We need a sustained, high-engagement metric." "I am not making out with you in front of a barista, Silas. I am not suggesting an exchange of saliva, Ms. Vanna. I am suggesting we optimize our physical baseline." He swiped his stylus across the screen, highlighting a new row. "While in public, the baseline distance between our shoulders will not exceed 4 inches. Furthermore, we must establish a designated visual anchor. When we are not speaking, we will maintain eye contact for intervals of exactly 4.5 seconds. Psychological studies indicate that 4.5 seconds of sustained eye contact simulates deep emotional intimacy without triggering the fight or flight response." I stared at him, completely horrified by how mathematically he had just broken down human affection. "You want us to count to 4 in our heads while staring deeply into each other's eyes?" "It guarantees the photographers capture the correct optic," Silas stated, closing his tablet as the SUV slowed to a halt. "It is a simple, repeatable loop. Can you execute it?" "I write scalable backend architecture for a living," I shot back, bristling at the challenge. "I can execute a 4.5-second loop." "Excellent." The SUV parked. Outside the tinted windows, a cluster of paparazzi was already swarming the pavement in front of the artisanal coffee shop. Silas turned to me. The cold, calculating CEO vanished, instantly replaced by a man who looked like he was staring at the center of his universe. The shift was so sudden, so flawlessly executed, that my breath hitched in my throat. He reached out, his large, warm hand wrapping firmly around mine. "Deployment begins now, Mia," he murmured, his voice dropping an octave. "Initialize the loop." Chapter 4. Stepping out of the tinted SUV was like walking into a strobe light. Camera flashes exploded from the sidewalk, accompanied by a cacophony of shouted questions. True to his word, Silas didn't miss a beat. His hand tightened reassuringly around mine, anchoring me in the chaos. He smoothly guided me through the throng of paparazzi, keeping our shoulders exactly within the 4-inch baseline parameter he had established. To the cameras, we looked like an impenetrable, highly synchronized power couple. Inside, my heart was frantically pinging the server, trying to establish a secure connection. We pushed through the heavy glass doors of the Articulate Bean, an aggressively hipster artisanal coffee shop that smelled of roasted macadamia and superiority. The sudden quiet was jarring. "Step 1 complete," Silas muttered under his breath, dropping my hand the exact second the glass doors swung shut behind us. "Let us procure the caffeine and execute the sitting variable." He marched up to the counter. The barista, a guy wearing a beanie and a denim apron, looked up from wiping the espresso machine. "Welcome to the Articulate Bean," the barista droned. "Our current single origin roast features notes of elderberry, wet soil, and existential dread. What can I get you?" "I require a highly optimized transaction," Silas said, looking at his Rolex. "2 black coffees, batch brewed for immediate delivery. Furthermore, my CTO," he gestured stiffly to me, "has a critical deployment schedule today. She will require a double shot of espresso, administered straight, to maximize her alkaloid uptake and coating velocity." The barista blinked. I closed my eyes and prayed for the ground to swallow me. "We don't do batch brew," the barista said defensively. "We only do slow drip pour-overs. It takes precisely 6 minutes and 40 seconds to honor the bean's journey." Silas stared at him as if the man had just suggested we communicate via carrier pigeon. 6 minutes is a catastrophic latency issue for a beverage. You are bottlenecking your own throughput. "Silas," I interrupted, elbowing him sharply in the ribs before he could try to streamline the hipster coffee industry. I offered the barista an apologetic, strained smile. "We will take 2 vanilla lattes. With oat milk. Take your time honoring the bean." Silas looked appalled. "Vanilla syrup is pure processed sucrose. It will cause a spike in your glycemic index followed by a severe crash at exactly 11:30 a.m., destroying your productivity. If I don't get the vanilla syrup, I will purposefully crash the servers at 11:30 a.m., I threatened in a sweet, quiet whisper. Silas's jaw clenched, but he handed the barista a sleek black credit card without another word. Once we had our vastly inefficient lattes, we moved to a small, distressed wood table right by the front window. Outside, the paparazzi were pressed against the glass like hungry zombies, their camera lenses practically smudging the pane. "Initialize the visual anchor," Silas ordered, taking a rigid seat across from me. "Right. The 4.5-second eye contact loop." I took a sip of my latte, set the ceramic mug down, and looked directly into my boss's eyes. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. Silas's eyes were a very dark, intense brown, flecked with tiny hints of gold. I had never noticed before because I usually avoided looking at him for fear of being fired. He was staring back at me with the unwavering, laser-focused intensity of a predator calculating the exact trajectory to its prey. 3 Mississippi. For Miss. "Your posture is slouching," Silas murmured, his voice barely carrying over the ambient indie folk music. "It projects insecurity to the lenses outside. Adjust your spinal alignment." "I am trying to look relaxed," I hissed through a tight, closed-mouth smile. People in love do not sit like they have a steel rod fused to their vertebrae. People in love also do not glare at their partners as if evaluating them for a critical system failure, he shot back, his dark eyebrows pulling together in a scowl. "I am glaring because you are micromanaging my skeletal structure." I leaned forward, planting my elbows on the table, completely abandoning the 4-inch proximity rule in favor of closing the distance to properly scowl at him. "This is supposed to be a date, Silas. You have to pretend you actually enjoy my presence, not just my data output." Silas leaned in to meet me, his face inches from mine, his jaw tight with frustration. "I am executing the parameters we agreed upon. If you find my methods lacking, perhaps you should submit a bug report." "Consider it submitted. Priority level. Critical. Your romance algorithm is completely broken." We were locked in a furious, silent staring contest. The air between us was practically crackling with hostility. I was so annoyed by his robotic micromanagement that I completely forgot about the cameras outside, the IPO, and the beta test. I just wanted to dump my oat milk latte over his perfectly styled head. Click, 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 click. The sound of 50 rapid-fire camera shutters snapping outside the window finally broke my focus. I jerked back, my face flushing hot. Silas immediately straightened up, adjusting his cuffs with terrifying calm. The 15-minute baseline has been achieved, Silas announced, checking his watch. Let us return to the office. We have a board meeting at 0900. 3 hours later, I was safely hidden in my cubicle, writing a script to automate database backups, when Dave popped his head over the partition. Mia, Dave whispered, holding up his phone. You're trending on Twitter. My stomach plummeted. I grabbed his phone, fully expecting to see an article detailing how miserable and hostile we looked. Instead, the headline from a major celebrity gossip site read, Synapse CEO and new flame turn up the heat. Below the headline was a massive, high-definition photo of Silas and me at the coffee shop window. It was captured at the exact moment we were furiously glaring at each other. But stripped of the audio, the image told a completely different story. We were leaning across the table, our faces inches apart. My intense, furious glare looked like breathless anticipation. Silas's dark, scowling focus looked like a man utterly, aggressively consumed by the woman in front of him. The tension practically radiated off the screen. Wow, Dave said, sounding mildly terrified. I didn't know Silas Vance was capable of smoldering. I stared at the photo, my heart executing a weird, fluttery skip that had absolutely no basis in logic. The internet thought we were passionately in love. The algorithm thought we were a perfect match. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized the biggest threat to this beta test wasn't a system crash. It was the terrifying possibility that Silas Vance might actually be good at this. Chapter 5. The back-end engineering bullpen is not a place for the weak, the well-rested, or the heavily tailored. It is a subterranean ecosystem sustained by dim lighting, the hum of cooling fans, and a terrifying amount of energy drinks. We speak in grunts, Slack messages, and the occasional string of profanity when a server times out. So when Silas Vance strode into the engineering pit at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, wearing a bespoke navy suit that probably costs more than my car, the entire department collectively stopped breathing. A junior developer dropped a handful of Cheetos onto his keyboard. Dave, my team lead, slowly slid his chair down until only his eyes were visible above the cubicle partition, like a terrified prairie dog. Silas ignored them all. He marched directly to my desk, his leather Oxfords completely silent on the carpet, and stood behind my chair. Silas, I said, cautiously taking my hands off the keyboard. Is there a fire? Are we being audited? Did the algorithm accidentally match you with the mayor? None of the above, Silas said, pulling up a spare rolling chair and sitting down right next to me. I am here to execute the environmental shadowing protocol. I stared at him. The what? To make our beta test believable to the board, I need a comprehensive understanding of your daily variables, Silas explained, opening his tablet. A successful merger requires cross-departmental integration. I cannot convincingly fake a profound emotional connection with you if I do not understand what it is you actually do down here in the dark. I write the back-end logic that keeps your billion-dollar company running, I pointed out. I am aware of your output, he countered smoothly. I am here to observe your process. Proceed with your workflow. Ignore my presence. Ignore your presence? I whispered frantically, gesturing to the terrified engineers around us. Silas, you are the CEO. You being down here is like Darth Vader dropping in to watch the stormtroopers do paperwork. Dave is literally praying under his desk. Silas glanced over at Dave's cubicle, where a soft whimpering sound could be heard. Tell David that if he does not resume compiling his assigned modules in the next 30 seconds, I will reallocate his stock options to the marketing department. The frantic clacking of Dave's keyboard immediately resumed. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Fine. But if you're going to shadow me, you have to follow the rules of the pit. No hovering, no interrupting my flow state, and do not touch Boolean. Silas's gaze shifted to the small, bright yellow plastic rubber duck sitting perfectly centered on top of my monitor. He stared at it for a long, calculating moment. You brought a bath toy to a corporate environment, he noted. He is not a bath toy. He is a senior debugging consultant, I corrected, gently tapping the duck's plastic beak. When my code breaks and I can't figure out why, I explain the script to Boolean, line by line out loud. It forces the brain to slow down and process the logic sequentially. It's called rubber duck debugging. It's an industry standard. Silas looked from the duck, to me, and back to the duck. You verbally process your system failures to a hollow piece of polyurethane. Yes. That is the most wildly inefficient, psychologically alarming troubleshooting method I have ever encountered. Well, it works. Now hush. I have a script to fix. I turned back to my IDE, trying to drop back into my flow state. It was incredibly difficult. Silas had positioned his chair so close to mine that our knees were practically brushing. I could smell his cologne, something crisp, expensive, and completely out of place among the scent of stale coffee and ozone. For 20 minutes, he sat in complete silence, watching lines of Python scroll down my screen. Then I hit a snag. The script was supposed to aggregate user data for a targeted push notification, but it kept throwing a syntax error on line 42. I groaned, leaning forward to squint at the screen. I checked the variables. I checked the API calls. I picked up Boolean the rubber duck. Okay, Boolean, I muttered. We define the function here. We initiate the for loop to iterate through the user IDs. If the ID is active, we append it to the list. Else we drop it. Why is it failing? Silas leaned closer, his shoulder pressing warmly against mine as he stared at the screen. Your logic is perfectly sound. The if/else pathway is structured correctly. The system is rejecting a valid command. This IDE is clearly malfunctioning. I will have IT issue you a new machine. The machine is fine, Silas, I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Computers don't randomly reject logic. They do exactly what you tell them to do. If it's failing, it's because I'm telling it the wrong thing. Line 42, Silas pointed to the screen, his tone authoritative. The loop condition. Else. Followed by drop_user. The syntax is correct. I stared at line 42. I stared at line 41. Then I started laughing. Silas frowned, his dark eyes snapping to my face. What is humorous about a system failure? It's not a system failure, I giggled, pointing to the screen. It's an indentation error. Look. I highlighted the else statement. It was indented with 3 spaces instead of 4. Python relies on whitespace to define code blocks, Silas, I explained, quickly tapping the spacebar to align it properly. It doesn't care how brilliant or sound your business logic is. If you don't follow its exact parameters for spacing, the whole thing crashes. I hit run. The terminal flashed green. Execution successful. I turned to look at Silas. The terrifying, hyper-optimized CEO was staring at the screen, genuinely stumped by a single missing space. He looked completely baffled, and suddenly, incredibly human. A single unit of empty space broke the entire algorithm, Silas murmured, sounding almost offended on behalf of the logic. Yep. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Sometimes, Silas, the problem isn't the grand design. It's just that you're standing too close or too far away from the variables. Silas turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto mine. We were inches apart, completely violating his 4.5-second eye contact rule by stretching it out into a long, quiet moment. The frantic energy of the bullpen faded into the background. I see, he said softly, his voice dropping into a register that sent a highly illogical shiver down my spine. I will have to pay closer attention to the whitespace then. He didn't move away. He just kept looking at me, the rigid lines of his posture softening just a fraction. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Dave slowly lowering his phone, having clearly just snapped a photo of us for the company Slack. For once, I didn't care about the optics. The beta test was suddenly compiling a very different kind of code. Chapter 6. Your authenticity metrics are tanking, Chloe, the head of public relations, announced, tapping a manicured fingernail against the glass of the conference room table. The coffee shop photo was a massive spike in engagement, but since then, the data has flatlined. The public thinks Silas is too robotic. We need a lifestyle patch. I sat across from Silas, sinking lower into my ergonomic chair. A lifestyle patch? Like an update. A candid social media post, Chloe clarified, sliding a tablet toward us. It displayed a grid of influencer couples laughing on beaches, eating oversized pretzels, and looking obnoxiously happy. We need spontaneous, unscripted joy. A selfie that says, "We are a normal, highly compatible human couple who enjoy weekend leisure activities." Silas stared at the tablet as if it were a security breach. A selfie is a narcissistic allocation of bandwidth. It serves no functional purpose other than to bloat cloud storage servers. "It serves the IPO, Silas," Chloe shot back. She was the only person in the building, besides me, who didn't seem terrified of him. Saturday. Local park. Casual attire. "Mia, you're in charge of the camera. Do not come back to this office on Monday without a minimum of 3 usable JPEGs." Which is how I found myself standing in the middle of Centennial Park on a Saturday afternoon, holding my smartphone while my CEO looked like a man preparing for a firing squad. I had adhered to the casual attire directive, wearing my soft peach cardigan and high-waisted denim. Silas, however, had clearly malfunctioned at the concept of leisure. He was wearing dark, tailored slacks, a pristine white button-down, and a pair of Italian leather loafers that probably cost more than my rent. "Silas, you look like you're about to execute a hostile takeover of the duck pond." I sighed, lowering my phone. "Relax your shoulders. Put your arm around me." Silas stiffly placed a heavy arm around my shoulders. I held up the phone, framing the shot with the sun-dappled trees in the background. "Okay, smile on 3, I instructed. 1, 2, 3. I snapped the photo and looked at the screen. I groaned. I looked perfectly relaxed and happy. Silas looked like he was mentally calculating the structural integrity of the park bench we were sitting on. "Your facial recognition software must be failing," Silas said, leaning over to look at the screen. "That is an acceptable baseline expression of contentment. You look like you're being held for ransom. Silas, you have to loosen up. You're outside. The sun is shining. The birds are executing their little avian algorithms. Just act human." "I am human, Mia," he replied, his brow furrowing. "I just do not see the efficiency in contorting my facial muscles to simulate a joy I am not currently experiencing." "Fine," I huffed, dropping my phone into my lap. "Then we sit here until you experience genuine joy." Silas checked his watch. "I have a scheduled conference call with the Tokyo development team in 2 hours." "Then you better find a reason to smile quickly, buddy." We sat on the bench in a tense standoff. Silas was radiating impatience, and I was stubbornly refusing to lift the camera again, until he stopped looking like a Terminator. That was when the rogue variable entered our environment. It was a scruffy, golden-haired mutt of indeterminate breed. It trotted out of the bushes, completely off-leash, its tail wagging furiously. It sniffed a nearby tree, spotted us on the bench, and immediately locked its sights on Silas. "What is that?" Silas asked, stiffening as the dog trotted happily toward him. "It's a dog, Silas. You know, a quadrupedal mammal. For legs, barks, occasionally fetches data." "I know what a dog is," he said tightly, pulling his feet back slightly. "It is not tethered to an owner. It is an uncontrolled asset." The dog reached our bench, sat down directly in front of Silas, and offered a soft woof. Silas stared down at it. The dog stared up at Silas. Then, with lightning speed, the dog lunged forward, clamped its jaws onto the heel of Silas's left Italian leather loafer, and yanked. Silas let out a highly undignified squawk of surprise as his foot was pulled off the ground. The loafer popped off. The dog immediately dropped into a playful bow, the expensive shoe clamped triumphantly in its mouth. "Hey!" Silas shouted, completely dropping his stoic CEO persona. "Drop that. That is bespoke footwear." The dog, believing this was an incredibly fun new game, took off running across the grass. "Mia, do not just sit there. My shoe has been compromised," Silas demanded, hopping on one foot, his perfectly groomed hair falling into his eyes as he pointed furiously at the retreating mutt. I didn't help him. I couldn't. I was laughing too hard. But my engineering reflexes kicked in. Without even thinking, I raised my phone and hit the camera button, snapping a burst of photos. I caught Silas in mid-hop, one foot bare in the grass, his face a picture of absolute, unscripted outrage as he yelled at a golden mutt sprinting away with his shoe. His tie was loose, his hair was messy, and the icy robotic shell was entirely shattered. Eventually, a highly apologetic jogger ran over, retrieved the slightly slobbery shoe from the dog, and handed it back to Silas. Silas spent the ride back to my apartment in stony, mortified silence. On Monday morning, I was summoned to the PR department. Chloe was waiting for me, her tablet displaying the photo of Silas yelling at the dog. It had already been posted to Synapse's social media accounts. "Mia," Chloe said, looking at the screen with something akin to religious awe. "Look at the metrics." I leaned over. The post had millions of likes. The comments were universally positive. "OMG, the CEO of Synapse is actually hilarious. He looks so human." Relationship goals. When your billionaire BF gets bested by a stray dog. "We didn't just meet our engagement quota," Chloe breathed. "We crashed the server. He is trending globally as the relatable billionaire." I looked at the photo. Silas didn't look terrifying or calculated. He looked ridiculous, chaotic, and entirely real. And as a warm, illogical flutter settled in my chest, I realized I liked the unscripted Silas a whole lot more than the optimized one. Chapter 7. A tech gala is essentially a high-stakes server migration disguised as a cocktail party. Everyone is networking, trying to steal everyone else's data, and hoping the open bar doesn't cause a system crash before midnight. The annual Silicon Valley Innovators Gala was the biggest event of the year, and as the CEO of Synapse, Silas was the undisputed keynote attraction. I, by extension of our fake relationship, was the shiny new peripheral device he was showing off. Beatrice's styling team had struck again. I was poured into a floor-length emerald green silk dress that draped like liquid glass, paired with delicate gold geometric jewelry. Silas, predictably, looked devastating in a classic black tuxedo. When he had picked me up, he paused in my doorway, his eyes doing a slow, thorough scan of my outfit that made my pulse spike in a way I couldn't blame on caffeine. "Your visual aesthetic is highly optimized," was all he said, but his voice was an octave lower than usual. Now, standing in the middle of a glittering ballroom in San Francisco, I was sipping champagne and trying to remember the 3 safe conversation topics from our master spreadsheet. Silas had stepped away to speak with a venture capitalist, leaving me momentarily unguarded by the champagne tower. "Mia vana, I presume?" I turned. The man approaching me was practically the antithesis of Silas. He had artfully tousled blonde hair, a relaxed unbuttoned collar, and a smile that looked like it had been focus grouped for maximum charm. "I am," I said cautiously. "Julian Croft, CEO of Nexus Systems," he said, offering his hand. I recognized the name. Nexus was Synapse's biggest competitor in the predictive data space. Julian was known for being the cool boss, the kind who put ping-pong tables in the break room, and offered unlimited PTO. "I'm a big fan of your work, Mia," Julian continued, his eyes crinkling warmly. "I analyzed the structural framework of the Synapse match algorithm before the press embargo. Your back-end routing logic is a masterpiece of efficiency. Silas is lucky you didn't crash the entire grid during that little beta test hiccup." He knew. He didn't know the relationship was fake, but he knew the 100% match was a deployment error. "The architecture held," I said neutrally, taking a sip of champagne. "I know it did. Because you wrote it." Julian leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Honestly, Mia, your talent is being bottlenecked at Synapse. Silas Vance runs that place like a server farm. At Nexus, we encourage creative coding. I'm building a new AI division, and I need a lead architect. Name your price. Double your current salary? Full creative control." I stared at him, genuinely stunned. He was aggressively poaching me in the middle of a gala. "Ms. Vanna's bandwidth is fully allocated, Croft." The temperature in our immediate radius dropped to absolute zero. Silas materialized behind me. He didn't look at me. His dark, lethal gaze was locked entirely on Julian. Julian chuckled, holding up his hands in surrender. "Silas, I was just complimenting Mia on her brilliant routing logic. Surely you aren't monopolizing her proprietary tech and her personal life." "Her tech belongs to Synapse," Silas said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that I had never heard him use before. "And her personal life is currently integrated with mine. Neither are subject to acquisition." "Everything is subject to acquisition for the right price," Julian smirked, clearly enjoying the confrontation. He looked at me winking. "Think about the offer, Mia. Call me if you want to write code for a company that actually possesses a heartbeat." Julian gave a casual wave and slipped back into the crowd. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Well, That was a highly unexpected variable. I turned to Silas, expecting him to execute a logical breakdown of Julian's corporate strategy. Instead, Silas was staring at the spot where Julian had just disappeared. His jaw clenched so tightly a muscle ticked along his cheekbone. His hands were curled into tight fists at his sides. "Silas?" I asked softly. "Are you computing?" He blinked, his eyes snapping down to me. The stoic, calculated CEO was completely gone. In his place was a man experiencing a massive, unhandled exception. "He was attempting to extract you," Silas stated, his voice tight. "He was trying to poach me for Nexus. It happens in the industry." "I am aware of industry standard poaching, Mia," Silas interrupted, taking a step closer. The strict 4-inch proximity rule was instantly abandoned. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating off him. But he was not looking at your routing logic. He was looking at your collarbone. I stared at him, my heart skipping a beat. "Silas, are you experiencing jealousy?" "Jealousy is a redundant emotion caused by insecurity and poor resource management," Silas said immediately, though his breathing was shallow. "I am simply identifying a security threat to a critical asset." "I am a person, Silas, not a server rack." "I know what you are," he murmured fiercely. Before I could process that sentence, the string quartet in the corner transitioned to a slow, sweeping waltz. Silas didn't ask. He reached out, his hand firmly wrapping around my waist, and pulled me directly onto the crowded dance floor. It was a complete breach of our contract. We hadn't scheduled a Category B physical interaction dancing. He pulled me flush against his chest, one hand resting squarely on the bare skin of my back where the silk dress dipped low, sending a shockwave of electricity straight to my brain. His other hand intertwined with mine. "Silas, what are you doing?" I whispered, my voice incredibly breathy as we began to sway. "The paparazzi are taking photos." "Let them," he murmured, his dark eyes fixed entirely on mine, completely ignoring the flashing cameras surrounding the dance floor. "If Croft or anyone else in this room requires a visual narrative to understand that you are unavailable, I will provide the data." He spun me gently, pulling me back in so closely that I could hear the heavy, rapid thud of his heartbeat beneath his tuxedo jacket. For a man who claimed to operate without a central nervous system, his heart was hammering like a malfunctioning hard drive. "You aren't just protecting the beta test right now, are you?" I whispered, looking up at him, the logic of the situation rapidly disintegrating. Silas looked down at me, the rigid lines of his face softening into a look of absolute, terrifying vulnerability. "No," he confessed softly, his hand tightening on my waist. "I am not." Chapter 8. "Your heart rate is elevated," Silas noted, not looking up from his tablet as the SUV glided through the suburban streets of New Jersey. "Because I am currently anticipating a system-wide crash," I hissed, clutching my purse. "Silas, my mother is not a board member. She doesn't care about our IPO or our neural compatibility score. She cares about whether or not you eat your vegetables, and if you're going to break her daughter's heart." "I have prepared a comprehensive response to both variables," Silas stated calmly. He tapped a folder on his screen. "I have analyzed your mother's Facebook profile. She enjoys gardening, procedural crime dramas, and live, laugh, love decor. I have adjusted my conversational baseline accordingly." "You did not just run a data crawl on my mom. I performed due diligence, Mia. It is essential for the narrative." We pulled up to a modest 2-story house with a frantic array of petunias in the front yard. My mother, Maria, was already standing on the porch, waving a tea towel with enough force to ground a small aircraft. "Remember," I whispered as we stepped out of the car. "No spreadsheets. No talk of allocating bandwidth. Just be a boyfriend." Silas adjusted his tie. "I will execute the boyfriend.exe protocol to the best of my ability." The afternoon was a masterclass in surrealism. My mother immediately ushered us into the kitchen, which smelled of roasting chicken and rosemary. Silas stood in the center of the room, looking like a high-tech monolith in a world of floral curtains and magnetic refrigerator poetry. "So Silas," Mom beamed, handed him a bowl of potatoes and a peeler. "Mia says you're very busy with your computers. Does that mean you don't have time to help with the dishes?" I froze. Silas looked at the potato. He looked at the peeler. He looked at my mother. "Efficiency is paramount in any operation, Mrs. Vanna," Silas said, stepping to the sink. I find that manual labor provides a necessary cognitive reset for high-level problem solving. He began to peel. He didn't just peel, he executed a high-velocity, low-waste extraction process that would have made a professional chef weep. Over dinner, Silas sat stiffly, flanked by my mother's collection of ceramic roosters. I watched, fascinated, as he navigated the conversation. "Mia tells me you're a billionaire," Mom said, casually piling more chicken onto his plate. "What do you do with all that money? Do you have a boat?" "I've always wanted to see a big boat." "I do not possess a boat, as the depreciation value and maintenance costs are logically unsound," Silas replied. Then he paused, recalling his due diligence notes. "However, I do have a high-definition home theater system. I am told the resolution is quite suitable for Law and Order, Special Victims Unit." My mother's eyes lit up like a fiber optic cable. "Oh, I love Detective Stabler." For the next hour, Silas Vance, the man who once fired a consultant for being 3 seconds late to a Zoom call, listened to my mother explain her theories on Season 12's plot holes. He didn't check his watch once. He didn't even correct her when she said the Google instead of Google. After dinner, while Mom was in the kitchen making coffee, I found Silas in the living room, staring at a framed photo of me from the 3rd grade. I was wearing thick glasses and a t-shirt that said "I'm with the science fair." I was a very high-maintenance variable back then, I murmured, standing beside him. "The glasses are structurally sound," Silas said softly. He turned to me, his expression unreadably gentle. "Your mother is an interesting data set. Her household operates with a high degree of entropy, yet the emotional output is consistently positive. It's called a home, Silas. It's supposed to be a little messy." He looked back at the kitchen, where my mother was humming a tune. "I have not spent time in an environment like this since before my father's firm went public. Everything since then has been optimized." He looked at me, and for a second, the CEO was completely gone. He looked lonely. He looked like a man who had forgotten that not everything needs to be a transaction. "Silas," my mother called out, walking in with a tray. "I made your favorite. Mia said you like things clean, so I made a sugar-free, dairy-free lemon tart. It's a bit sour, but it's healthy." I hadn't told her that. She'd clearly been doing her own data crawl on the news reports about his health-conscious lifestyle. Silas took a bite. I knew for a fact he hated lemon. His face went through a momentary struggle, a brief system conflict between his taste buds and his social programming. "It is exceptionally clean, Mrs. Vanna," he said, swallowing it with heroic effort. "The acidity provides a robust sensory experience." My mother beamed. "Such a polite boy, Mia. You keep this one." As we walked back to the SUV later that night, Silas was quiet. The boyfriend.exe protocol had clearly put a strain on his processors. "You did good, Silas," I said, sliding into the leather seat. "You actually survived a Vanna family dinner without a single NDA." Silas didn't answer immediately. He looked at the small house in the rearview mirror as we pulled away. "She is a very effective administrator of affection," he finally said. He reached over, and instead of the 4.5-second eye contact rule, he simply took my hand and rested it on the center console, his thumb tracing a slow, thoughtful circle on my skin. The dinner was a significant upgrade to my current Sunday schedule. I leaned my head back, my heart feeling full and confusingly heavy. The parent function had successfully integrated, but the output was making my own logic feel very, very buggy. Chapter 9. The clock on my monitor read 2:14 a.m. The Synapse headquarters was a ghost town, the only light coming from the blue and green blinking LEDs of the server racks behind the reinforced glass. I was hunched over my keyboard, my eyes burning and my blood type currently hovering somewhere between espresso and Red Bull. 3 hours ago, a rogue script, ironically a legacy patch I'd been meaning to refactor, had triggered a massive cascading failure. The Synapse Match database was stuck in an infinite loop, and if we didn't break it before the markets opened in Tokyo, the IPO would be dead before breakfast. "The secondary node is still rejecting the handshake," I croaked, rubbing my face. "Boolean, help me out. Why is the handshake failing?" "Because you are attempting to force a connection on an encrypted port that was closed during the 0100 security sweep." I nearly fell out of my chair. Silas was standing at the entrance of my cubicle. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, and his tie was nowhere to be seen. He looked exhausted, rumpled, and for the first time completely out of sync with his environment. Silas? What are you doing here? I thought you were at the investor gala in San Jose. I was, he said, pulling up a chair and sitting beside me. He smelled like expensive whiskey and burnt electricity. I received the critical alert on my watch. I am the lead architect of this company's original framework, Mia. I don't leave my lead engineer to handle a Tier 1 system failure alone. He reached over, his fingers brushing mine as he took control of the spare mouse. He didn't ask, he just started typing. For the next 2 hours, we worked in total, focused silence. It was the most intense pair programming session of my life. There was no boyfriend.exe protocol, no 4.5-second eye contact rules, and no PR optics. There was just the code. We moved in perfect synchronization. I would identify a memory leak, and he would already be drafting the patch. He would suggest a reroute, and I would already have the terminal open. Our brains were finally running on the same clock speed. There, I whispered, hitting the execute key at 4:30 a.m. The terminal screen sat still for a heartbeat, then scrolled rapidly with white text. Recovery successful. Node stable. Latency, 12 milliseconds. We did it. I breathed, slumped back in my chair. The adrenaline that had been keeping me upright evaporated, leaving me feeling like a jelly-filled donut. Silas didn't move. He stayed leaned in toward the screen, his arm resting on the back of my chair. The quiet of the office was heavy, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. "You are incredible," he murmured. I turned my head. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at me. His dark hair was messy, a faint shadow of stubble was showing on his jaw, and his eyes were dark with something that definitely wasn't neural compatibility data. "I just followed the logic," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "No," Silas said, his voice low and raspy. "Logic didn't save the server. Your intuition did. You see the gaps in the white space that I miss." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face before his fingers finally tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "I spent my entire life trying to build a system that eliminates risk, Mia. But you are the most significant risk I have ever encountered. And I find that I no longer wish to mitigate you." My heart executed a catastrophic logic error. "Silas, we're in a server room. It's 4 a.m. This is a very statistically unlikely time for—" "Forget the statistics," he interrupted. He leaned in, and this time, it wasn't for a camera. It wasn't for a publicity patch. It was a slow, desperate, and entirely unoptimized kiss. It tasted like late-night caffeine, and the relief of a successful deployment. For a second, the whole world was just white space. No code, no IPO, no spreadsheets. Just the feeling of his hand on my waist and the frantic, rhythmic thud of two hearts that were finally, genuinely, 100% matched. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Both of us were breathing as if we'd just run a marathon through a firewall. That, I whispered, my eyes still closed, was a very high-latency interaction. Silas let out a low, shaky laugh, a sound of genuine, unscripted joy. "Agreed. We should probably run a few more tests to ensure the results are repeatable." But as I smiled and leaned back in, I didn't see the tiny red light on the security camera in the corner of the room, silently recording the one moment we finally forgot to pretend. Chapter 10. The glow of a perfect, unscripted server room kiss has a half-life of exactly 7.5 hours. I arrived at the Synapse building on Friday morning feeling lighter than air. I had bypassed the coffee shop and made my own matcha at home, humming while I debugged a minor script. My phone had buzzed at 7 a.m. with a simple text from Silas. "Good morning. My resting heart rate is still elevated." It was the most romantic, absurdly nerdy text I had ever received. I was officially completely in love with my robotic CEO. I sat down at my desk, tapped my rubber duck, and opened my IDE. "Don't smile," Dave said, popping his head over the cubicle wall. He looked like he had just watched a ghost format his hard drive. "Whatever you do, don't look at the internet." "Dave, I work in back-end infrastructure. Looking at the internet is literally my job description." "What's wrong?" "It's not a code bug, Mia. It's a data breach." He slid his phone across my desk. The screen was open to TechCrunch, but the headline was plastered across every major news outlet and trending worldwide on Twitter. "Synapse CEO fakes perfect match to save IPO. The fatal flaw exposed." My stomach plummeted. I grabbed the phone, my eyes scanning the article. Someone had leaked the exact raw server logs from the day of the press preview. The screenshots were undeniable. There, in stark white text on a black terminal background, was the Python traceback error. Error, variable tester underscore pool not found. Fallback to global underscore directory. Match ID, 001 Silas Vance, paired with match ID, 8472 Mia Vanna, due to routing exception. The article didn't just expose the bug. It framed the entire relationship as a sinister, manipulative corporate conspiracy designed to defraud investors. Sources close to rival firm Nexus Systems provided these logs, proving that Silas Vance's highly publicized romance is nothing more than a desperate PR patch for a broken algorithm, the article read. Julian Croft. He hadn't just tried to poach me at the gala. He had been fishing for confirmation while his cybersecurity team actively bypassed our firewalls to steal the raw deployment logs. My desk phone rang. It was Eleanor, Silas's assistant. Her voice lacked its usual crisp efficiency. She sounded panicked. Ms. Vanna. Boardroom A. Now. When I walked into the executive boardroom, the atmosphere was toxic. Chloe from PR was pacing, looking like she was ready to murder someone with her stiletto. A dozen lawyers in gray suits were frantically shouting over each other, analyzing SEC fraud regulations. And at the head of the long glass table stood Silas. He wasn't the rumpled, vulnerable man who had kissed me in the server room a few hours ago. The boyfriend.exe protocol was completely uninstalled. He was wearing a razor-sharp charcoal suit, his posture rigid, his face an impenetrable mask of absolute ice. The CEO was back online. Silas, I breathed, stepping into the room. The breach, it has to be Julian. He mentioned my routing logic at the gala. I can trace the IP logs. I can find out how they bypassed the firewall. The origin of the breach is secondary, Ms. Vanna. Silas cut me off. His voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. The data is already public. The narrative has collapsed. I stopped in my tracks. Ms. Vanna, look at the stock futures, one of the board members shouted, pointing to a monitor. The line graph was nosediving. We are down 20% in pre-market trading. The SEC is going to launch an investigation for investor fraud. There is no fraud, Silas stated, his voice slicing through the panic like a scalpel. The beta test contract was entirely legal. However, the public perception of manipulation is a critical threat to the IPO. We must immediately sever the narrative link between the algorithm's failure and the company's leadership. How? Chloe asked, throwing her hands up. The internet is calling you a sociopath who played with a junior engineer's life for profit. Silas didn't flinch. He looked at the board, then slowly turned his dark eyes to me. There was no apology in them. There was nothing at all. We execute a hard reset, Silas said clinically. We issue a press release stating that the initial match was indeed a system error, but that we entered into a relationship organically afterward to explore the anomaly. Then we announce that the anomaly was a failure. The relationship is over. Effective immediately. The room went silent. You're dumping her? Via press release. Chloe asked, stunned. Silas, that makes you look even colder. It makes me look like a CEO who is correcting a personal error to focus entirely on his company, Silas replied smoothly. It shifts the blame from a systemic corporate fraud to a failed, brief office romance. The algorithm works. The romance didn't. He was rewriting the variables. He was protecting Synapse by completely throwing our beta test, and everything that happened last night, into the recycle bin. Silas, I whispered, stepping closer to the table. You can't just delete this. We fixed the server last night. We successfully mitigated a Tier 1 database failure, Ms. Vanna, Silas interrupted loudly, his eyes flashing a stark warning. Do not mention what happened. Your technical assistance was appreciated. However, this PR crisis requires immediate containment. Eleanor has drafted your severance package from the beta test contract. You will receive your full stock options as promised. He was paying me off. I stared at the man who had held my face in the dark, who had laughed at a golden retriever stealing his shoe, who had eaten my mother's terrible lemon tart. He had packed all of that away behind a firewall to save his stock price. I don't want the stock options, I said, my voice trembling but gaining strength. If this is how you handle an unhandled exception, Mr. Vance, then your system architecture is fundamentally broken. And I don't write code for broken systems. I turned on my heel and walked out of the boardroom, leaving the CEO of Synapse entirely alone with his flawless, optimized metrics. Chapter 11. Packing up a cubicle takes a surprisingly short amount of time when you don't have a lot of personal effects. I unplugged my mechanical keyboard, wrapped the cord tightly, and dropped it into my cardboard box. Next went my oversized hoodies, my spare phone charger, and finally, Bullion the rubber duck. The bullpen around me was dead silent. Even the cooling fans of the server racks seemed to be humming at a lower, more funeral-appropriate frequency. "Mia," Dave whispered, hovering near the edge of my partition. He looked genuinely heartbroken. "You don't have to quit. HR said you could transfer to the European division. You could code in Paris." "I can't work for this network anymore, Dave," I said quietly, taping the box shut. "The root directory is corrupt. Silas made his choice." Before I left the desk, I woke up my monitor one last time. I opened the terminal and typed out a final script. I located the shared API I had built to manage our beta test calendar. The one that had seamlessly merged our schedules, coordinated our coffee dates, and tracked our public affection quotas. I didn't just disable it. I permanently deleted the repository. Access revoked. Array empty. I dropped my security badge on the desk, picked up my box, and walked out of Synapse headquarters without looking back at the top-floor executive suite. 2 hours later, the official press release dropped. It was a masterpiece of cold corporate spin. It confirmed the initial 100% match was a fascinating systemic routing anomaly, and stated that Silas Vance and Mia Vanna had attempted to explore the data, but found their long-term logistical trajectories to be incompatible. It was sterile, efficient, and completely absolved the company of any malicious intent. The market responded exactly as Silas had predicted. The panic subsided. The narrative shifted from fraud to failed office romance. By Monday morning, Synapse's stock futures were back in the green. The IPO was saved. Silas Vance had won. For the first week, Silas operated with his usual terrifying efficiency. He finalized the underwriter agreements. He crushed the quarterly earnings call. He fired a VP of marketing for using 3 different fonts in a slide deck. His environment was perfectly controlled, devoid of any unpredictable variables, chaotic family dinners, or vanilla lattes. It was exactly what he had always wanted. And it was completely, agonizingly miserable. On Thursday evening, Silas sat in his sprawling, minimalist penthouse overlooking the city. The apartment was completely silent. The temperature was precisely 68 degrees. There was not a single item out of place. He opened his tablet to review his schedule for Friday. 0800, executive briefing. 0900, financial audit. 1100, legal sync. He scrolled down to the afternoon. There was a massive, glaring gap in the interface. His calendar app, stripped of the API Mia had built, looked broken. The block at 1 p.m., which used to be designated for beta test lunch protocol, was just empty whitespace. Silas stared at the whitespace. He thought about the indentation error in Mia's Python script. How a single pocket of empty space had caused the entire system to crash. "Eleanor," Silas said out loud, tapping his Bluetooth earpiece. "Yes, Mr. Vance," his assistant answered immediately. "The coffee in the break room is inadequate," Silas said, his voice tight. "I require a vanilla latte, with oat milk, and extra sucrose." There was a long pause on the line. "Sir, you previously stated that vanilla syrup causes a catastrophic spike in your glycemic index." "I am aware of the metrics, Eleanor. Procure the latte." He ended the call, tossed his tablet onto the pristine glass coffee table, and rubbed his eyes. He was experiencing a critical system failure. His heart rate was consistently elevated, his sleep cycle was disrupted, and his cognitive processing was severely bottlenecked by intrusive, unprompted memories of Mia laughing at a dog stealing his shoe. He walked over to his massive, floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city lights. He had treated his life like a flawless algorithm, isolating and removing any variable that threatened his control. When the hack happened, his default programming kicked in: protect the core system, protect the company. He had run the logical equation and determined that cutting Mia loose was the only way to save the IPO. But as he stared at his reflection in the glass, the terrifying truth finally compiled. Love wasn't a variable you could optimize. It wasn't a bug you could patch out of the system. It was the entire operating system. Without Mia's chaotic, brilliant, warm energy, his perfect billion-dollar company meant absolutely nothing. He had saved Synapse, but he had entirely bricked his own life. Silas turned away from the window, a sudden, desperate energy overriding his stoic programming. He didn't need to check the stock prices. He needed to reboot the system. Chapter 12. For the first time in his adult life, Silas Vance attempted to write a script he couldn't compile. He sat at the massive glass desk in his penthouse, a blank Python file open on his private terminal. The cursor blinked mockingly in the darkness of the IDE. He had spent the last 3 hours trying to run a logical analysis on his current psychological state. He had tried to quantify his loss, to define the variables of his misery, and to map a secure routing protocol back to his baseline efficiency. He typed, def calculate _ recovery, Mia _ Vanna. If Mia _ Vanna equals none. Return baseline _ status. He stared at the code. He hit delete. It was garbage logic. There was no baseline status anymore. The baseline was a void. He had spent his entire life building systems to eliminate unpredictability, only to realize that the most profound, vital experience of human existence was entirely, terrifyingly uncomputable. Love did not operate on an if/else statement. It defied computation. Silas slammed his laptop shut. He tapped his earpiece. Eleanor. Yes, Mr. Vance? Eleanor responded, her voice tight. She had been dealing with a highly erratic CEO all week. I need the current geographic coordinates of Mia Vanna. There was a flurry of typing on the other end of the line. Ms. Vanna is currently at the Moscone Center attending the Global Tech Innovators Summit. I show she has a final round interview with Julian Croft for the lead architect position at Nexus Systems. The interview commences in exactly 45 minutes. Silas stood up so fast his ergonomic chair spun backward and hit the glass wall. Cancel my afternoon block, Silas ordered, already sprinting toward the private elevator. Cancel my Friday block. Cancel next week. Sir? What should I list as the reason for the absence? Tell the board I am executing a hostile reacquisition of a critical asset, Silas said, stepping into the elevator. And Eleanor? Yes, sir. Buy a dog bed for the office. A large one. Across town, at the Moscone Center, I was sitting in the front row of the main auditorium, nursing a cup of truly terrible convention center drip coffee. I missed oat milk. I missed vanilla syrup. I missed a terrifying man with a strict 4-inch proximity rule. Up on the massive, 100-foot digital display screen, Julian Croft was pacing the main stage, delivering his keynote address on the future of seamless AI integration. He looked relaxed, charismatic, and perfectly unbothered. He was everything Silas wasn't. Working for Nexus would be easy, creatively fulfilling, and completely safe. It also sounded incredibly boring. And so, Julian crooned into his headset microphone, clicking his presentation remote. When we optimize the human experience, we eliminate the friction of busy. The massive 4K presentation screen behind Julian violently glitched. His slick, minimalist PowerPoint slide vanished, replaced by the stark, blinding white glare of a raw document viewer. Julian stopped pacing. The crowd of 5,000 tech executives murmured in confusion. Apologies, folks. Julian laughed smoothly. Looks like we have a slight latency issue in the AV booth. Let's get that patched. It is not a latency issue, Croft. It is a system override. The voice echoed through the massive auditorium PA system, instantly recognizable, chillingly calm, and possessing the authority of a localized earthquake. I choked on my terrible coffee. From the wings of the stage, bypassing 3 highly confused security guards, strode Silas Vance. He wasn't wearing a tie. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, his hair was windswept, and his jaw was clenched with absolute, terrifying determination. He walked directly to the center of the stage, ignoring the gasping crowd and the sea of smartphones suddenly raised to record him. He didn't ask Julian for the microphone, he simply reached out and took the presenter's clicker from Julian's hand. Silas. Julian sputtered, looking completely derailed. What is the meaning of this? You are hijacking my keynote. I am patching a fatal error, Silas stated, not looking at Julian. His dark eyes swept the massive auditorium, scanning the thousands of faces until they locked directly onto mine in the front row. My breath completely left my lungs. Silas pressed the clicker. The 100-foot screen behind him didn't display code. It didn't display a press release, a spreadsheet, or a highly optimized data chart. It displayed a piece of physical corporate letterhead. It had been hastily scanned, slightly crooked, and projected for 5,000 people to see. Scrawled across the paper, in sharp, aggressive, entirely handwritten ink, were the following words. Mia. The algorithm was wrong. The press release was a lie. I do not care about the metrics, the IPO, or the board of directors. I am terrified of unpredictable variables, but I am significantly more terrified of a timeline that does not include you. Please do not compile code for Nexus. Their architecture is inferior. I love you. Silas. The entire Moscone Center erupted into absolute chaos. Journalists were shouting, camera flashes were blinding the room, and Julian Croft looked like he was going to pass out. It was the most wildly inefficient, highly unoptimized, desperately unsecure method of communication in the history of Silicon Valley. It was a handwritten note projected onto a 4K screen. It was perfect. Silas tossed the clicker onto the stage. He didn't say another word to the crowd. He walked down the center steps of the stage, his eyes never leaving mine, and strode directly up to my seat. The crowd parted around him like the Red Sea. Silas. I breathed, standing up, my hands trembling as I looked at the massive, crooked love letter glowing behind him. Your optics. The stock price. You just committed corporate sabotage on a live stream. The stock can crash, Silas said, his voice raw and entirely devoid of his robotic CEO persona. He stopped inches from me, completely abandoning any concept of personal space. I will rebuild it. But I cannot rebuild my operating system without you, Mia. You are the only logic that makes sense to me anymore. He looked down at me, his dark eyes completely vulnerable, waiting for my input. You wrote a letter. I laughed, a tear slipping down my cheek. By hand. On paper. That is a terrible use of bandwidth. It was the fastest deployment method available, he murmured, his hands coming up to gently cup my face. Do you accept the patch? Silas, I whispered, rising onto my tiptoes. Push to production. He didn't hesitate. Right there in the front row, amidst the deafening roar of 5,000 tech industry professionals and the flashing cameras of the global press, Silas Vance kissed me. It wasn't a beta test, it wasn't a PR stunt, and it definitely wasn't optimized. It was chaotic, terrifying, and absolutely perfect. Chapter 13. The logistics of escaping a convention center after hijacking a competitor's keynote speech to declare your love via a handwritten projection are, unsurprisingly, highly complex. The moment our lips parted, the reality of the room crashed back in. A tidal wave of reporters was already surging toward the front row. Microphones extended like javelins. Tactical retreat, Silas murmured, his hand wrapping firmly around mine. We didn't walk. We bolted. Silas dragged me through the side exit, past a bewildered AV technician, and down a labyrinth of concrete backstage corridors. We burst out of the loading dock doors into the blinding San Francisco sunshine, diving into the back of his waiting black SUV, just as a handful of paparazzi rounded the corner. The heavy doors slammed shut, sealing us in the quiet, climate-controlled sanctuary of the back seat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We were both breathing heavily, staring at each other. The adrenaline was slowly beginning to ebb, leaving behind the massive, undeniable reality of what Silas had just done. You, I panted, pointing a finger at him, are completely out of your mind. Julian Croft is probably pressing charges. The board of directors is going to have an aneurysm. The PR team is going to need a PR team. Silas leaned back against the leather seat, running a hand through his usually immaculate hair, which was currently a chaotic mess. He looked at me, and to my absolute shock, a wide, breathtaking grin broke across his face. Let them, he said, sounding lighter than I had ever heard him. The stock will dip, then it will stabilize. The market loves a narrative of disruptive passion. And if the board demands my resignation, I will happily hand it to them and launch a new startup. You'd throw away Synapse? I asked, my voice softening. Synapse is just hardware and code, Mia, he said, turning to face me completely. He reached out, gently taking both of my hands in his. I spent my entire adult life trying to build a perfectly sterile environment because I thought efficiency was the only way to protect myself from failure. But failing the beta test with you was the best thing that ever happened to me. He pulled out his tablet with one hand, tapping the screen to wake it up. He opened his encrypted files and pulled up the PDF of our non-disclosure and temporary beta relationship protocol. For the record, Silas murmured, his eyes locking onto mine, I hated this contract. I hated scheduling my affection for you. I hated limiting our proximity to 4 inches. With a single tap, he highlighted the file. He hit delete. File permanently removed from server. No more contracts, Silas declared softly. No more scheduled 4.5-second eye contact loops. No more acceptable parameters. I want the unscripted version of you, Mia. I want the messy hoodies, the rubber duck debugging, and your mother's terrible lemon tarts. I want the unpredictable variable. Unpredictable variables cause system crashes, Silas. I whispered, a tear escaping down my cheek as I smiled. Then we will reboot, he replied instantly, lifting a hand to wipe the tear away with his thumb. And we will rewrite the patch. Together. Every single day. I let out a watery laugh, throwing my arms around his neck, completely abandoning any remaining sense of professional decorum. Silas caught me effortlessly, pulling me into his lap, his arms wrapping around me like a reinforced firewall. So, I mumbled into his shoulder, breathing in the scent of his expensive cologne and the faint, lingering smell of adrenaline. Just to clarify the new system architecture, we are actually dating now. We are executing a permanent merger, Silas corrected, pressing a kiss to my temple. And there is no exit clause. Good. Because I am definitely not giving you your stock options back, I teased. Keep them, he chuckled, a deep, warm sound that vibrated against my chest. Oh, and you should know, I have already authorized the purchase of a large, orthopedic dog bed for my executive office. I pulled back, staring at him in disbelief. You bought a dog bed? For the top floor of Synapse? If I am going to embrace unpredictable variables, I decided to start with the quadrupedal mammal that stole my loafer. Eleanor is tracking down the shelter that picked him up from Centennial Park. I believe we need a mascot. I looked at the brilliant, terrifying, ridiculously overprepared man holding me. The algorithm had been completely broken. It had bypassed the sandbox, queried the wrong directory, and triggered a fatal exception. But looking into Silas's eyes, I knew the code hadn't failed at all. It had just found the one perfect piece of logic I never knew I was looking for. Push to production, Mr. Vance, I smiled, leaning in to kiss him. Executing, he whispered against my lips. Epilogue, happily ever after, and a bug fix. 1 year later. Drop it. Glitch, I mean it. That is a proprietary prototype, not a chew toy. I leaned over the edge of my massive, frosted glass desk on the 50th floor of Synapse headquarters, pointing a stern finger at the scruffy golden mutt happily sprawled on the oversized orthopedic bed in the corner. Glitch thumped his tail against the floor, let out a soft woof, and reluctantly dropped the VR headset controller from his mouth. Good boy, I sighed, tossing him a highly optimized, vet-approved dental treat. My office was a sharp contrast to the rest of the executive suite. While the walls were still minimalist and cold, my desk was an absolute disaster zone of tangled charging cables, half-empty mugs of matcha, and 3 separate monitors displaying cascading streams of Python. Sitting proudly atop the center monitor, wearing a tiny custom-made tuxedo, was Boolean the rubber duck. I leaned back in my chair, adjusting the oversized college hoodie I was wearing over my tailored trousers. Being the chief technology officer had its perks. Namely, I had completely rewritten the executive dress code. A soft chime echoed from my calendar app. The screen flashed. 1400 hours unallocated bandwidth. The heavy glass doors to my office slid open. Silas Vance walked in, looking every inch the terrifying, billionaire CEO in a bespoke charcoal suit. To the rest of the world, he was still the hyper-efficient, ruthlessly calculating head of Synapse. He still scheduled his bathroom breaks. He still terrified junior developers with a single glance. But as the glass doors sealed shut behind him, the icy shell melted. He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his suit jacket, and let out a long exhale, his dark eyes instantly seeking me out. The Q3 earnings report is finalized, Silas said, walking over to Glitch and giving the dog a firm, affectionate scratch behind the ears. Synapse Match has officially captured 45% of the global market share. Your refactored algorithm is operating with 0 latency and a flawless execution rate. Of course it is, I grinned, spinning my chair to face him. Because I removed the routing error that queried the global employee directory. The sandbox is secure. A shame, Silas murmured, walking around my desk. That routing error yielded the greatest return on investment in the history of this company. He leaned down, bracing his hands on the armrests of my chair, trapping me in the best possible way. The stark overhead lights caught the glint of the dark, brushed titanium wedding band on his left hand. We had gotten married 6 months ago in a quiet, highly inefficient ceremony in my mother's backyard in New Jersey. Silas had eaten an entire slice of lemon tart without complaining once. It is exactly 2 p.m., Silas stated, checking his Rolex. Commencing the unoptimized hour. When Silas had restructured his life to accommodate me, he hadn't completely abandoned his love of scheduling. Instead, he had hard-coded a mandatory, unmovable 1-hour block into his calendar every single afternoon. No meetings, no calls, no metrics. Just me. What is on the agenda for today's unallocated bandwidth, Mr. Vance? I asked, looping my arms loosely around his neck. I have no agenda, he said, the words still feeling slightly foreign on his tongue, though the warm, devastating smile on his face proved he was getting used to them. We could stare at the ceiling. We could verbally process code to your rubber duck. Or we could execute a sustained category of physical interaction. Category A. I laughed, shaking my head. Silas, you threw out the beta test contract a year ago. You don't have to use the legal terminology anymore. Old programming is difficult to overwrite, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. But I am highly motivated to practice. He closed the distance, kissing me with a slow, thorough intensity that completely wiped my mental cache. A year later, and my heart still executed a chaotic flutter every time the terrifying CEO of Synapse looked at me like I was the only variable that mattered. When we finally broke apart, Silas rested his forehead against mine, his thumbs gently stroking my jawline. Have I mentioned recently that you are a catastrophic disruption to my baseline efficiency? He whispered. Every day, I smiled, pulling him down for one more kiss. But that's the thing about a fatal system error, Silas. Sometimes, you just have to embrace the crash. Glitch let out a happy bark from his bed. Boolean the duck watched over the compiling code. And the CEO of Synapse happily let his entire schedule fall completely, perfectly out of sync.